Hello everyone and welcome to the Azure Automation in a matter of minutes session. I'm Charlie, I'm a Red Hat solution architect based in Vienna. What we're going to do today is we are going to automate some Azure processes with Ansible Automation. What you're going to need to re-implement this is you're going to need access to the Azure portal, portal.azure.com, as well as you are going to need Ansible Tower. That's what we are going to use. Ansible Tower is the enterprise framework around Ansible itself, providing an API, web interface, workflow management, role-based access control, secure credentials, and so on and so on. We are not going to go into the Ansible Tower installation itself because it's pretty straightforward. All you need is a RHEL installation, and then you download Ansible Tower. It's really just a tar file that you unpack and start the setup sh, and you are good to go. If you want to get it from somewhere, just go for Ansible Tower, googling. The first link you find provides you the possibility to try it for free and download the bundle and request a license key. It's really simple. Right. So if you have Ansible Tower up and running, and if you have access to Azure itself, then first and foremost, you want to get a feeling of working with Azure. So my suggestion is the easiest is to go ahead and create some virtual machines, right? To get the feel what resources you need or to roll out virtual machines. The second thing is always, the second step is, if you got used to that, I have actually here, if you look into all resources, I already have a couple of virtual machines running. The second thing that you are going to need, like in any case, you need to look up what kind of Ansible modules, roles, collections you are going to use in this project, right? So the way I do this, I usually look into all Ansible modules to see how far is some technology supported by Ansible. The chances are good that it's very well supported. So actually there are like over 3,000 Ansible modules available nowadays. If you look into the cloud modules section, then we'll see actually that here, Azure. Azure has a lot of modules added, and they are all starting with the Azure Resource Manager, right? So if we are looking here for the virtual machine string, we'll find that the Azure Resource Manager virtual machines are very well supported, right? So we'll take a wild guess here and look into this module called Azure Resource Manager Virtual Machine module. Which actually does what we exactly need. It creates and manages virtual machines on Azure. Here's an advice. Usually you should read the whole page, look through the table, what parameters you can give this module. Actually, I find it way more straightforward and easier to learn to look straight into the examples, right? And if we look into it, we'll see that that's exactly what we are looking for. All we need to do is name the resource group on Azure that we are going to run our VMs in, give it a name, provide it a username and password, and name the image you are going to use within this machine, right? So what I did was I went ahead and started to write my own Ansible playbook around this Ansible module to roll out Azure VMs. Now let's see where that is. GitHub.com. Let's see. Here we go. So this was my first playbook. This is the task actually that implements for me my first virtual machine called Jump Host. Yes, it has a lot of information hard-coded. The only difference you see to the previous example is that here I use a variable for a resource group name, I inject some SSH keys, and I actually use bring your own subscription Red Hat image. You have multiple possibilities to run RHEL on Azure. One option is to start up VMs with the subscriptions bundled into them and pay additionally, but typically customers have some subscriptions on their own, so they can start up VMs where the image is provided by Red Hat, and they can use their own subscriptions for their existing subscriptions, right? To have that, you have to include a plan, right? So creating a virtual machine has some pre-requirements. So if you run only this part of the playbook, you will find out that you will realize that you need a resource group defined. You will have to have a virtual network defined, as well as a subnet defined in that virtual network. These are the three pre-requirements. Without those, this part will just fail and complain that it didn't find the resource group, didn't find the virtual network, and didn't find the subnet. So I went ahead and looked up some other examples, have found how to set with the Azure Resource Manager subnet and with the Azure Resource Manager virtual network their networking components, as well as to define the resource group itself. And with this setup, actually, I can roll out a single and simple virtual machine. What I do for that is I go ahead and create the resources in Ansible Tower that we are going to use. So the first step is writing, of course, the Ansible playbook. And but to tell the truth, you wouldn't always want to start from scratch. Ansible Automation provides you now some official collections from different vendors. So there's an Azure collection, including all the Microsoft roles that follow the best practices, right? My implementation is a very bare bone one. But if I want to use the playbook I have just written within Ansible Tower, I need to connect Ansible Tower to Azure, right? So first and foremost, what I'm going to need is I need to ensure that Ansible Tower can authenticate against Azure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a credential within Ansible Tower. I will call it Azure credential, and it will be of type Microsoft Azure Resource Manager. There are different kind of credentials that you can set up within Ansible Tower, right? And as soon as I choose the type, it will ask for the subscription ID I use on the Azure side, a username, and the password. There are different possibilities here to authenticate, but I found it the simplest now to create a user within Azure and provide its password to Tower. Right, so we find this information in the Azure Active Directory, and right, I clicked too fast. In the Azure Active Directory, not in groups but in users, I set up a user here, right, and we are going to need the name of the user. Right, that's one thing, the username, and we are going to need the subscription ID as well. Subscription ID, right, this thing here. So you provide the information to Ansible Tower to connect to Azure with your credentials to your subscription to manage your resources. And the password, if I remember correctly, was, we'll see if that was correct. Right, so I created a credential. The second thing, what I'm going to need is I have to, so now Ansible Tower can authenticate against Azure. The second thing is I need to have my playbook imported, right? So in Ansible Tower, the sources for playbooks are called projects. And if I want to set up a project, I will call it Azure test repository, and with the source control type of Git. And I have the repository URL here, right? This is a public repo. Word of warning: these are my test playbooks. If you want to use them, feel free, but you have been warned. So what happens now? If I have created a project, Ansible can go out and sync this repository. It did just that. This is why it turned green. That means I have imported this Git repository into Tower now. This Git repository contains all my playbooks, including the one I have shown you on GitHub. And now I can create, based on these playbooks, I can create a job template, right? So I go ahead and create a job template that we can run then. This will be called create jump host on Azure, jump host VM on Azure. Inventory, actually we just need localhost. The project is the one that we have just imported. Projects are sources of playbooks, typically repositories, right? From this project, we have looked at the Azure VM jump host YAML. I haven't even shown you that playbook. Oh yes, I did. I showed you the playbook. So I use now that playbook, and I'm going to need the Azure credentials of type Microsoft Azure Manager. Right. So what I did again, I imported all my playbooks from the Git repository. I created a credential so that Ansible Tower can authenticate against the Azure portal. Then I have created now a job template that goes ahead and uses my playbook here that I have written and imported. Right? That's it. I save it now. And I can go ahead in the job templates and I can start now my job. Let's see how it runs. Right. It did not work out because it did not work out, right? My mistake. Sorry about that. Because if you look into the playbook, it rolls out the VM just right, but it also references some SSH keys that shall be injected into the VM so that I can log in directly there, right? Now what I do is I created these SSH keys file, but I didn't want to put it in clear text on GitHub, so I encrypted them with Ansible Vault, right? That means to run this playbook, I forgot to create a second credential, a Vault type credential. It will be of type Vault. Right? And the Vault password, if I remember right, is this. So I can save it now. I can go back to my job template that I started, but it failed to run, right? And I can edit my job template. It will not just need the Azure credential. It will, to authenticate against the portal, it also will need to be able to decrypt my file that contains my SSH keys, right? So what I want to do here is I have to add the second credential as well, what I have just created. Save the job. And I can go ahead and start it again. Now we see the difference that it has was able to decrypt the vault, right? It was able to access the content of those encrypted data. However, it says there is a variable name that is nowhere to be found. Where is it? Resource group name. Let's see why it references that. I actually use it here, this variable, resource group name, and it's referenced, but it's not defined, right? I did this because I want to be able to give at any launch of this job a new name for a resource group. I want to be able to work with different resource groups, right? So how do I do this with Tower? With Tower, if I go to this job, I can add a survey, right? Which asks me, what resource group shall we use? And the variable name should be, you guessed it, resource group name, right? The answer type is text, let's say 3 to 100 characters, and the default answer is insert a resource group name here. Add, right? Save. So we save the job now for a third time, and we can have it run again. First mistake was that I didn't have my encrypted data decryptable. Now the second mistake was that I referenced the variable of the resource group name that wasn't defined anywhere, right? So if I start it now again, this time it doesn't just go ahead straight ahead and runs, but actually asks for the content of this variable. So what we can call it here, demo resource group, right? Next. And now launch. Again, decrypting data with the SSH keys, and it goes ahead now and creates the resource groups, right? The first steps are going through. That means right now I can move to my portal overview and see all my resources. I have different resource groups here, but I can filter here. Well, where is my resource group? It isn't up to date yet. Let's see. Yes, it should be already here. Let's refresh. The resource group should be called not all, just demo resource group, right? So I filter now my view only to those resources that are within the resource group demo resource group, right? And Ansible Tower goes ahead and creates all those resources within the resource group. It has created the resource group itself, then a virtual network, now the subnet, and now it's already working on creating the first jump host. Let's see, if I refresh now, I should see these additional resources. Not quite yet. Right. I know why. Here they are. Here they are. Okay. I thought I made another mistake. Right, so Tower now goes through all the necessary steps to create the network interface, the network security group, the public IP address, the virtual network it's going to use, and last but not least, the virtual machine itself. It isn't too talkative here. We could have set a verbosity level here to be able to follow with it, to follow what it's actually doing. Refresh more. Well, the public IP address is already here. All right. Come on, Azure. Or resources. And here we go. Is there a virtual machine? Yes, we have a virtual machine here. Let's see the overview if it's already running. Right, this is our new friend. It's called jump host in this resource group, and it's in the state of creating, so I will not be able to SSH into it yet. Gotta wait for that. And it seems this takes some time. As long as this is creating the VM, I can show you another Ansible Tower functionality. We let this job run. Actually, Ansible Tower always needs an inventory to access those end nodes it's managing, right? For the creation of this virtual machine we just have deployed on Azure, we didn't need any, because these modules just connected from my Ansible Tower installation to the Azure cloud, right? We didn't talk to any of those, really. But if you want to see the virtual machines that are available within Azure, what we are going to need is we are going to create an inventory. We will call it Azure Inventory. We save it. As soon as we create an inventory, we can add sources. One of the sources will be called Azure Source, Azure Inventory Source, because an inventory can have several sources, and the type is obviously Microsoft Azure Resource Manager. We are going to need a credential. Ansible Tower pre-fills that for us, and we can save this now. And as soon as we have the Azure inventory set up, we can refresh its sources. It was gray, but now it goes ahead and should be green in a second, because now it goes out to the Azure portal, authenticates with the credential we provided earlier, and lists all the VMs that we have there. And our host list should contain the jump host. Actually, it should contain 2 jump hosts. It can be that it still takes some time to get this one running. Okay, it's running, right. That means we should be able to SSH into this box, right? I'm going to copy this. I'm going to log into the host, and I'm going to SSH to that. Of course, we accept that. All right. We didn't create my user, just the Ansible user, actually. So, and that's it. We are up and running within Azure, right? And this is Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8 without any subscription, actually. It's going to tell me it doesn't have any subscriptions registered, so it doesn't have actually software access. But this is the advantage of bringing your own subscriptions. Now I could go ahead and register this VM to my satellite server using my subscriptions instead of consuming the ones on Azure. And that's about it. I think the Ansible Tower job is now all done, right? Rest, it have created a VM, the job is done, all changes are done, and within all resources in the Azure portal, I can filter for my newly created resource group, just the demo resource group, and see all these resources have been created right now. That's about it. 0 to Azure Automation with Ansible. Pretty simple and straightforward, practically within minutes. Lessons learned. With Ansible, it's really straightforward to automate practically anything, cloud processes as well. I could have gone ahead and used different resources than virtual machines, right? In Azure, you find tons of other resources that you can configure and roll out and destroy with Ansible as well, not just virtual machines, obviously. As well as Ansible Tower has built-in Azure integration with all the inventories, with all the secure credential management, and so on, right? So thank you very much for your time. I hope I was able to show you how simple it is to go ahead and roll out infrastructure as a service on Azure. Thanks a lot.